Okay, good morning, everybody. We pick up at the bottom of 78b, or Minhu. What is that, about uh, 6 lines from the bottom. Um, okay, so we had been talking about the idea of rowing, there are some cases in which you determine the nature of a mixture not by the volume, the relative volume of the ingredients, but by the appearance of the ingredients. So if it's diluted to look like, no longer look like the colored substance, like blood, then it's considered not blood. But if it's diluted, if it's not that diluted, it still looks like blood, then it's blood. Urminhu, they asked the question. Lishahu Male Rukin, you have a bucket that's full of spit. So spit is something that is more the appearance is as water, it's colorless, but it has more viscosity. So you have a pail that's tame and you want to put it in the mikvah, but the pail contains some spit at the bottom. Avit bilo, you put it in the mikvah. Ki'ilu lo tavo, that doesn't count. Like the spit interrupts the water of the mikvah; it doesn't contact the entire kli. Meragline, but if it's urine, which is the same viscosity as water, rowing mine, then then the urine becomes like water. And so, in other words, I think what it means is that the water freely mixes with the urine, and the water is able to contact all parts of the pail. Mole mechatas, what if it's filled with the water, the mixture that is prepared for a paraduma, for the purification ritual of a paraduma? So that's water with ash and so on. Um, then the pail doesn't isn't considered to be in the mikvah unless there's more mikvah water than chatas water in the pail. Um, okay, so um, so the reason that so that the difference between urine and mechatas is that urine can become part of the mikvah because it's a watery liquid, and as it contacts the water of the mikvah, it becomes part of the mikvah. This does not work for chatas water because chatas water is itself a primary source of tuma. So it would be like a sheretz in the mikvah, um, and it can't become part of the mikvah water itself. Okay. So Manshamaslay de Islay rowing. Where do you get the idea that we have the principle of what something looks like makes a difference? Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda. V'katane desagile beruba. And this Mishnah says, um, and this Mishnah says that a majority of mikvah water over chatas water in the bucket um, is okay to overcome the chatas water, right? And it all becomes considered chatas water by volume. So why don't we use the principle of rowing? Where you should go by not by the volume, not by rove, but by whether, if it were a different color liquid, then it would look like it would now look like water. Rabbi Lokan. Rabbi says no problem. Adidei Hadarabe. One is Rabbi Yehuda, and one is Rabbi Yehuda's. He's just citing his teacher, the Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabban Gamliel. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabban Gamliel. Ein rok mavatal rok, vein meraglayim mavatli meraglayim. Spit does not cancel out spit. In other words, the spit of a Torah person can't be mavatel the spit of a zav because that's which is tame. So min b'mino and you're in the same story. So Rabbi Gamliel, which Rabbi Yehuda is quoting, is saying that min b'mino it cannot be canceled at all. So when Rabbi Yehuda makes that statement, it's not his own, it's Rabbi Gamliel's. And Rava Amar, Rava has a different answer. We're not talking about where you're trying to make the whole bucket tahor. You can have a bucket where the outside becomes tameh and the inside is still tahor. Okay, demidina sagiluhu b'choldehu. Um, it's enough. Like you don't need to do you don't care what's happening inside the bucket. The inside the bucket was tahor to begin with. Um, so why you don't even need any water when it says it just needs a little bit of water. I mean, I guess it's to ensure that the surface of the lip of the bucket is actually contacted by the water. So we don't care how much water came inside the pail because the inside the pail is not tamei in the first place. We only care about the outside. Um, Rabbanan who degazeru. However, the rabbi said that if you have such a case, you should also you should be totaling the whole thing, including the interior, in order to make the outside tahar. Why? Because you might want to preserve what's inside the bucket. You've got something in the bucket for whatever reason you can't remove it. Why the spit is valuable to you, I have no idea. But you don't want to do such a thorough job that too much water is going to enter the bucket, and so you might not be so careful to make sure that mikvah water contacts the entire outside of the bucket, including the rim. So
Now, wouldn't you want that?
below matbile. Hmm?
I mean, isn't that the idea that this water should all become tahor or not?
No, it's the bucket that we're concerned about. The
Why
spit,
wouldn't
there's nothing in the case of the Mishnah. The spit itself, there's no problem with it. It's not tummy.
so then wouldn't we want the bucket to become tahor as well?
Yes, yes, but we're talking according to Rava. Rava's answer is, what kind of bucket we're talking about? Where only the outside is tummy, the inside is tahor. Okay, and you can have such a case. Um, So when you put it in the mikvah, strictly speaking, you only need to put the outside of it in the mikvah, and you don't care what happens on the inside. But the rabbi said, you know what? If people are going to be like careful about not getting any water in the bucket, then they're not going to be careful about making sure that all parts of the outside of the bucket are contacted by the mikvah water, right? They're going to miss something. So they said you have to let water into the bucket. You have to tovel the whole bucket. But if there's a problem inside the bucket that there's spit inside it that's going to prevent the inside of the bucket being contacted by the um, mikvah water, that's not such a big problem because strictly speaking, you don't need to tovel the inside of the bucket. Right? Why are they saying total inside the bucket? To make sure you do a good job on the outside. So in that case, Rove is fine. You need to get technical about how much water can enter the bucket. If enough water enters the bucket that most of the bucket is full of water, then that's certainly enough to make sure that you've done the outside of the bucket.
How do you have a kli that is not sealed, have part of it be tahor and part of it be tame?
Great question. So maybe when it became tame, it was sealed, or maybe it depends what material it is. Like if it's klicheres, I think you're right, but other materials, I think there might be a distinction. I'm trying to remember. Does that ring a bell at all?
I know that earthenware has a role, but it's just it seems weird.
It's a weird situation, but often these resolutions of contradictions are weird situations that like really you think that's what the Mishnah was talking about. But it's a way of resolving contradictions to make everything turn out okay.
So the outside of the bucket will be um, as long as the main mikvah touches it, won't it become tahor?
If the entire outside of the bucket is contacted by the may mikvah, yes. Now, what the rabbis are concerned about is if you're trying to be careful to keep the inside dry, then you're not going to be so particular. You're gonna um, not be careful enough to make sure that the entire outside surface of the bucket was contacted because water will slosh in, right?
Right.
Right. So, in order to make sure that you allow water to slosh in, they said if in such a case, you have to tovel the whole bucket, including the inside. Now, you're going to raise, technical difficulties about exactly how much water versus spit was inside the bucket. Did it work? Did it not work? We're not so concerned about whether it really worked because it doesn't really need to work. The real goal here is just to make sure that you get water in the whole bucket. No, on the whole outside of the bucket. So what's happening inside the bucket? Okay, we're going to let it go. It's we don't really care about the technical details of how much of every substance was inside the bucket. We just want to make sure that water gets inside the bucket in order to ensure that you're doing a good job on the outside of the bucket.
But once the outside of the bucket is somehow in contact with the mikveh water, then the entire rim of the outside would be tahor, presumably. And the
Yes,
inside,
correct.
it doesn't really matter. The inside, mamela almost would be fulfilled by the
Right, but if
requirement
you're
to be
if
done.
but if
Doesn't
you're
it?
really trying to make the inside, if the inside was really tame and you're really trying to make it tahor, then we have to get specific about, well, how much water, how much spit, right? Is it
Uh-huh.
rowing? Is it rove, right? But since there was never really make or a din a problem with the tuma of the inside was not tame, so we're not so particular. Rove is fine, rowing is fine, it doesn't really matter. The goal here is to make sure water gets in the bucket, inside the bucket, because we're concerned about what's happening to the outside of the bucket.
So then the outside, as long as something gets inside, you have to, the outside will be covered by water to some degree, enough to make it tame, the rim of the
Right.
outside.
So that's not quite right. What the rabbi said was fill up the whole bucket. Now, does it have to be filled with water exclusively versus, water plus spit, right? That they didn't care about. But they
Uh-huh.
did want you to fill up the whole bucket. So you can't ask, well, isn't there spit in the bucket? Right? Not a problem because we're not really concerned, strictly speaking, about the inside of the bucket. We're more concerned about the outside.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Amar Rava. Rava sums this up. Amar Rabbanan Betama. Um, Sometimes the rabbinic principle is that the nature of the mixture is determined by taste, right? By no tam. Vemarabanan beruva. Sometimes it's a question of the volume of rove. And vemarabanan b'chazusa. And sometimes it's rowing. Sometimes it's the appearance, like blood. So how does this? In what cases is which is which? Min b'sheino mino b'tama. If you have two different kinds of things, then we care about the taste, right? That if even if something is in a small proportion volume wise, but it still imparts taste to the mixture, you have a problem, right? Min bimino, but if it's two of the similar kinds of things, so if you have two cups of coffee, they both taste like coffee, right? Then there's no criteria of taste. Obviously, no matter how small or how large the proportion of cup A to cup B is, it's still going to taste like coffee. So tama is not nosin tama is not an issue. Then baruba. Then we go by volume, by the majority. And hechadika chazusa b'mara, but where there is an issue of appearance that's relevant, then we go b'mara, then we go with appearance, with what it looks like. Okay. Now, before we got into this, we said that we saw that Reish Lakish had said yesterday that if you're eating two different isurim at the same time in your mouth, then you can't get malchus because you never know. You don't know which one at any point outweighs the other one, right? You don't know which one is subsumed into the other one. So the hasra, the warning, can't be given specifically. Upliga to Rebbe Lazar, and this what Rebbe Lazar just what we just said is he argues with Rebbe Lazar. Rebbe Lazar. Kishem she'en mitzvahs mevatla zuazu, just as mitzvahs cannot cancel each other. Explain what that means in a second. Kachen isurim mevatlin zezet. Isurim also can't cancel each other. So the relevance to us is if you have, Rabbi Lazar says, if you have two forbidden substances in your mouth, they're both forbidden. You don't consider them a mixture. And the same, what does he mean about mitzvahs? So let's say, for example, the example that we're going to bring up is matzah and maror on Pesach, right? So you have mitzvah to eat matzah and mitzvah to eat maror, but the tastes are different. They cancel each other. Like the maror will, if you have both in your mouth at the same time, it's going to taste bitter because the maror is, if it's a bitter substance, it's going to overpower the other. And now man shamas le diamras mitzvahs mivat lo. Whose opinion is this that mitzvahs do not cancel each other? You can eat the matzah and maror together. I think you all know the answer. Hillel. The Tanya, we have a brisa. Amar Lav al Hillel Azak, and it said about Hillel the elder. Shaya karchan bevas achas v'yachon. He would make a sandwich of matzah and maror, and the Pesach, if it was in the time of the Mikdash, and eat them as a sandwich. Because that's how the Torah says it. Eat the Pesach with matzah and maror. So that teaches us that Hillel's custom teaches us that you can have multiple things that you're doing at the same time, even when the taste of one cancels the taste of the other. Okay.
So what's the point here that how is this relevant to Isurim that you cannot mix
Mm.
the Isurim, you can't add them together?
Yeah, that when you have a mixture of Isurim in your mouth, they're each considered separate. You're actually over on both of the Isurim. You don't say that there's a beetle, that the one is subsumed into the other. So Reish Lakish said yesterday, you do say they're subsumed into the other. What you have here is a mixture of indeterminate nature because you don't know which one is more at any given time. So I can't warn you about one or the other because I don't know which one you're being over on. But Rebbe Lazar would say, no, you're actually chayav on both of them. There's no subsuming of one into the other when it comes to Isurim, right? Two different Isurim are two different Isurim. You don't mix them into and say it's one or the other.
But then one, according to him, I would seem that one would have to receive a separate warning for each one of them. He wouldn't be chayav because unless the person warned him specifically for this isur and then for that isur, right?
I think that's right. Say again.
No, if the two isurim are separate, he's putting two
Yeah.
separate isurim in his mouth. He would say you'd have to warn the person on each one of them individually because he couldn't be chayav on either one unless he warned them specifically on each
Yeah,
one, right?
but if you have both in your mouth and the guy and somebody warns you about both of them or either one of them, really, then you'd be punishable for that one. Right? If you have tame and nosar in your mouth at the same time. So I could warn you about one or the other or both because each one is distinct. You are being over on tame, you are being over on nosar. We're not subsuming one into the other. You're being over on both. So I could warn you about either or both.
But if you warned him about the wrong one,
But
or
there's
not
no
the
wrong
wrong one, the
one.
opposite one. I
There's no
mean,
wrong one. They're both in your mouth.
no, I understand. Oh, okay.
If there's a
Right.
mixture and you don't know
Okay.
what the
Right.
status of the
Okay.
mixture is,
All
it
right.
could be the wrong one.
All
Okay.
right.
Tell Rabbanan. Rabbi Stott. Charson shel zav v'zava. So you have a kli of urine of a zav or a zava. So the urine from a zav or a zava is tame and makes the kli that it contacts tame, and then the kli breaks, and you have a shard of this kli. Pam rishon v'sheni tame, and then what do you do with it? You wash it out, you rinse it, right? So the first time that you rinse it, it's still tame, and the second time you rinse it, it's still tame. Shlishi tar. The third time, we've understood that the tuma has been expelled. B'med dvarim amurim, and when does that count? When does that work? Shanas and l'socho mayim. Um, when um, when you use water to rinse it. But if you try to rinse it with something else like the urine of a tahar person, right? Afilu asiri tame. You can do that as many times as you want. It never becomes tahar. So what's going on here is that urine, using a tahar person's urine is min b'mino. So it doesn't, um, it doesn't nullify the tame urine. Water does because it's min b'sheino mino, but urine does not. Right? Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov Omer Shlishi Afal Pi Shlo Nasan L'Socha Mayim Tahar. Uh, no, with urine, he says even with urine, the third time's the charm. Like you do it three times and it's fine. So let's analyze this. Man shamas le'diamar min b'mino lo batel. So the Tanakama, right? The first view is that you can never eradicate the tame urine with tahor urine. So who would say that? And that's min b'mino, right? Um, uh, who, sorry, who would say that min b'mino it never works, right? It can never be mevatel the tame urine. Rabbi Yehuda, that would be Rabbi Yehuda. Who? But we have a question. Pishton shetiva also nida. If you have flax that was spun by a woman who's a nida, mesito tahor. If you move it, then you are still tahor. So what's the story with this like spinning flax? Um, Apparently, the way it's done is with spit, right? You have to keep, it has to be moist, it has to be damp. And the way they would do it would be with spit. So the spit of a nida, a woman who's a nida, is tame. And that tuma can apply to anyone who moves the tame item. It's not just, yes. Vim hayalach. Um, so that applies to the flax once it was already completed and dried. But if it was still damp, mesito tame mishum mashkapia. If you move it, then you become then you're tame, right? So if it's already dried out and there's no more spit there, then it's fine. Even if a woman who's a nida was the one who spun it. But if it's still damp, then if you move it, you're moving the spit of the nida and you're tame. Rabbi Hillel
So
Omer,
is that like something like Tame Midras, right?
yeah, well, midrash is if you sit on it, right, or step on it.
Right.
But
Well,
there's
he's
another,
picking it up, touching it. I mean, isn't that
right, there's different things. There's touching it,
right?
there's moving it, and there's stepping on it or sitting on it.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is just, it's the way of the world. People don't sit on flax. I mean, the typical thing would be to pick up a piece of material and carry and move it, right? So presumably the same would apply to sitting on it. Okay. Um, Rabbi Hillel Omer, Af harotvo b'mayim tame. Even if you've got this flax that was made by a woman who's a nida, and if you then moisten it in water, you're tame mishum mashke pia, because it kind of brings out the the saliva gets like reconstituted, okay, um, in the water, and then then it makes you tummy again. Vafilu tuva. Even if you rinse the flax many times with fresh water, it's still tummy. But wait a minute, isn't it min b'sheino mino? Why don't you use the three rinsing rule that we saw before with the klicheres or Papa shani rok the courier? You can't rinse spit out so easily. It really gets embedded in the fabric. Um, and so, you know, a pottery shard only absorbs so much, right? It doesn't absorb like right into the guts of it, if you will. So you can rinse it out. Whereas with flax, the nature of the material is that it really is super absorbent. It absorbs the tame spit so well that you can't rinse it out.
So there's no solution for a tame linen garment that has been
There,
that is tuma from.
um,
That's what it sounds like.
yes, that is what it sounds like. Um, well, so if it's dry, then it's fine, right? Because, um, yeah, it's interesting, right? 1 second. Why, if it dries? Okay, so there's a note here. The Gemara Nita says that the spit is tummy only when it's still moist. Once it evaporates, once it dries out, it's not a problem. But if you reconstitute it with water,
Right.
it kind of brings it back to life.
So it never leaves. It's there part of the garment, right?
Yeah, but if
Pour
it
water
dries
on it
out, then it's
again.
not time. If it dries out by evaporation, then it's not. Then it presumably, if you rinsed it in water, then it becomes tame again. Presumably, if it then dries, then it's tahor, right? Because it's now dry spit.
That
Then
applies to. It's already made the garment at least a sheni batuma.
Well, Well, the garment itself, why isn't the garment? Because touching it is
Unless the garment can't be.
the garment doesn't become tame by contact with spit. It's only if you move it, if then that it's moving it or sitting on it that makes you tame. Okay, contacting the spit does not make the garment tame.
Okay, I believe you. It's been a long time since I've looked at
So the
this.
garment
Yeah, me
doesn't
too.
become tame, only the person, right?
Correct. That's what I'm getting here. Yes.
And you cannot get rid of that. Puts the garment in a washing machine. I don't. They didn't have them, but let's say you put it in a
Right.
washing machine
Uh-huh.
and it went through rinse cycle, and there's no more spit then, right? You can't. There's nothing to recon. Or is it always there? We cannot. We can. And you can reconstitute
Well, the Gemara seems to
forever.
be saying it's always there. It's like so deeply embedded into the fabric, it's always there. However, if it evaporates and becomes dry, then it doesn't make you tummy anymore. It's still there. Okay, it can still be reconstituted by adding water, but while it's dry, it doesn't make you tummy.
So
Weird.
forever, it's always there. You put it in a maximum power washing machine, it's not going anywhere. It's
Yeah,
still.
you better put it in a good dryer. Because again, once it's dry, it goes dormant again.
But linen garments shouldn't be put in a washing machine anyway. But
Yeah, I
they
mean, that
did.
was just an example. I mean, I know, but I'm the point. That's the point I'm raising. If you,
They did have soap back then.
I don't know.
Would they use lye?
Lye and animal fat, and they may have even had detergents made from oils.
Well, what's the difference between soap and animal fat?
Well, you take you cure the animal fat. The difference between soap and detergent is soap is made with animal fats, and detergents are typically made from oils.
Uh-huh.
Palm olive got the name because it was made from palm oil and
Palm
olive
oil.
oil. That was not invented in the 20th century. That's been around for a very long time.
Uh-huh.
In fact, it was the major occupation of Jews in the land of Israel in the 16th century.
Really? I had no
Detergents, yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Huh.
Bernard Lewis went through the Ottoman census records and discovered that.
Huh.
So
Okay.
anyway, progressing.
The things you learn. Okay. Now the last thing in our Mishnah. Nisarev bedam psulim. So we said in the Mishnah that if blood of a regular carbon becomes mixed with the blood of an invalid carbon, then you shafech lama. Then you have to pour it down the drain. Um, um, yeah, then Rabbi Lazar had a different view. So let's look back to the Mishnah for a second. Yeah, Rabbi Lazar. So the Tanakhama says Yishafech Lama. You pour it down the drain. Rabbi Lazar, Machshir Rabbi Eliezer says it's okay. Imlo Nimlach. Yeah, it says it's kosher. What's the difference between? What's the argument about between Tanakhama and Rabbi Lazar? But my kamifli, Amar Svi. But goes ring gzera b'mikdash kamiflige. We're talking about whether you can make a gzera in whether we make a gzera in the mikdash. Demar Slavik goes ring. So so what he's saying is that technically there's not a problem here. Um, you could um, you could say that it's still in the right proportion. It's still valid. It's the mixture is still considered from the valid carbon, right? However, you could make a xera. You could see where you would want to do this, saying that we don't want to get involved in this at all. We're just going to say if it got mixed up at all with pasul dam, then we're gonna get rid of it. Marcelo law goes in. The other one says no. We're going to go by the letter of the law. We're not that in the mikdash. We assume that the Kohanim are more mindful. They're being careful. They know the halacha, and we don't need a xera. Rav Papa has a different answer. The Kuliyama goes through. Now, everybody says we would make a xera in the mikdash. V'hacha b'dam hatamtzis matzli lirbos al dam hanafesh kamiflige. What they're arguing about is, so we described how one of the puzzle blood situations that the Mishnah mentioned is the dam hatamsis. So when you do the shchita, the first blood that spurts out is what you use for zrika. That's dam hanefesh, and then later, the blood that drains later on is called dam hatamsis, and that is not valid for the avodah. So what is common, like how much, when you catch this blood, like how much of it tends to be dam hanafesh and how much of it tends to be dam hatamsis, right? So this is what they're arguing about. Marsav or shliach. One says, the Tanakhama says, no, it's possible because it's quite common for take too much blood, right, from the carbon after shchita, and too much of it is, a majority of it is dam hatamsis, which is puzzle. And the other, Rabbi Lazar says, Marsav lo shliach. No, it's not. That's not going to happen, right? The people, they know what they're doing. There's plenty of dam hanafesh that comes out, and they know when to stop taking the blood. And so the mixture is so we're not going to make a gzera on the mixture. Now, Bishlam Rav Papa. So, uh, according to Rav Papa, who held that Rabbi Lazar is only arguing about the dam hatamtzis versus dam hanefesh. So fine. That's why the Mishnah first says if it becomes mixed with puzzle blood, meaning blood of an invalid carbon. So it's like from two different animals. We're not talking about dam nefesh and dam tamsis. So fine. So I understand why you dump it. And then bedam hatamsis yishafech lama, and then there's a separate ruling about if the dam nefesh gets mixed up with the dam hatamsis, then you pour it out. So that's fine. El Rav Zvid, according to Rav Zvid, who says that Rabbi Lazar disagrees with both of those rulings, le'arveinhu v'lisninhu. Like, why do you need to have them listed separately? Why do you need to list dam hatamsis separately? Kasha, yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so yeah, the Rav Papa makes more sense because there's a distinction between the two cases. Whereas according to Rav Zvid, where he says that Rabbi Lazar disagrees with both, like why list these two specific cases? Just say puzzle blood mixed with non-puzzle with kosher blood. Okay, Kasha. So it ends with we don't have an answer for that one. I guess the Mishnah, go long Mishnah. What time is it? 20 ready. I guess we'll leave the Mishnah for tomorrow.
Well, what is the distinction between damat tamsit and the blood shochmim, the squeezing, right? We would squeeze blood out of the.
Well, now you're talking about the birds.
Particularly the birds. So this is not birds, right?
Right. I don't think there's a dam hatamsis and dam nefesh for birds. They don't have a lot of blood to begin with.
But what the Gemara was talking about earlier, a few dafim ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't know. They had to squeeze the remaining blood out. So isn't that like a tamatamsit?
Yeah, but that's birds, right? I don't think this applies to birds. I think you're right. I think that the dam hatamsis versus dam nefesh applies to mammals only and not to birds. Birds don't have much blood to begin with, right?
Right. So that's what I was wondering about. I mean, it's technically would be the same on a technical basis, more or less the same thing, same blood, right? But
yeah, I think you're correct. Yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here.
I'm just wondering. I have a deal here on we were talking a little while ago about min b'mino in using water to purify something 3 times on a kli cheres nishbar, right? And you pour the water 3 times. So it seems it's similar to, from what I recall, the minhag of the Sfardim. Before Pesach, they would purify glasses with water 3 times over 3 days, and they say you can use these glasses, cups, whatever, on Pesach.
Right.
That would be a way of koshering it for them. Not Ashkenazim tend not to hold that way, but the Sfardim do. They pour water and they go pour the glasses 3 times on the water, and they say that's kosher Pesach.
Right. So I think that's a question of how you treat the material of glass, right? Because that specifically applies to drinking glasses.
Right, but I
Um,
wonder if this is a
if it's
McCord.
related. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder. That's a good question.
If there's this is maybe a McCord for that practice.
Okay,
Not
yeah,
exactly the
there's some
same thing. I
similarity there. Yeah,
understand that.
there's some similarity there. I hear you. Yeah.
It's not exactly the same, correct? But there seems to be. I'm hearing this, and I'm thinking maybe there's
Mhm.
some. Maybe it's a McCord,
Mhm.
possibly.
Yeah. Okay, so tomorrow we'll pick up with the Mishnah. I think David is teaching tomorrow, and then I've got Thursday and Friday because he's going to be away. So see you all then.
Okay. It's dealing with them. Why have they